please.
Yes. We pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future.
Thank you, sir. Father, can you lead us in prayer, please?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God of faithfulness, we rejoice in the wonders of each season, the miracles of all your creation, and the beauty of your image in each child. And so we pray, root and ground us in faith, hope, and love. God of hope, we lift our hearts in gratitude for your holy blessings of our families, schools, church, world. And so we pray, fill us with your Spirit so that we may grow in community. Open us to the wisdom of your truth and soften us to pour out kindness and compassion. God of love, you plant us in your garden to grow together in Catholic education. We are deeply committed to honoring this sacred trust. And so we pray, unite us in one heart, mind, and soul as children of your family, so that we may abide with you in love as branches of the true vine, Jesus Christ. Amen. And please keep in your prayers the following people who have passed away recently. Jaheim Robinson, a student who was fatally shot at the Toronto High School on February 14th. Immaculata Falcone, grandmother of Philip Capobianco, principal at St. Matthew High School. Joseph McDonnell, father of Margot Goutreau, resource teacher at Good Shepherd School, and father-in-law of Paul Goutreau, principal at St. Dominic's School. We also pray for our staff and students' extended family members, especially those who have lost their lives due to COVID-19. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please stand for O Canada. We have no delegations, no public session. Can I have a mover for the approval of the agenda, please? Trustee Moore and Trustee Warren. That the agenda for the regular board meeting of February 22nd, 2022 be approved as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item F, school student departmental profile memo from the superintendent of learning and leading and learning, re the OCSB Children's Support Schools Acts of Kindness B community. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very pleased to be here this evening. In keeping with the Ottawa Catholic School Board commitment to providing equitable educational experiences for all our students, we provide an intentional focus on differentiated support for our children's support schools. The OCSB continues to find innovative strategies to build capacity among educators and increase awareness of the diverse student and family backgrounds who are members of each school community. This evening, I am pleased to have Debbie Lloyd, an elementary principal and the co-chair of the Ottawa Catholic School Board Equity Committee, here this evening to share with you some of the initiatives at our children's support schools. We will be happy to take questions at the end of the presentation, and I'd like to thank Mr. Edwards for helping with tech support. Principal Lloyd.
Welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, good evening, and thank you to the Board of Trustees for your interest in our children's support schools, the support of which aligns with our spiritual theme and strategic commitment of the community through acts of kindness and servant leadership. Please move the slide forward. Our children's support schools are the schools that have the following indicators. Typically, they're situated in low socioeconomic neighborhoods or transitional neighborhoods. These areas have subsidized housing, shelters at times, families on social assistance, or lower income and higher rates of food insecurity. Household demographics may include single parent households, level of parental education, recent immigration, refugee status, foster care, and or group homes. Students tend to experience higher levels of absenteeism, some mobility challenges, chronic illness, including a variety of forms of trauma, and readiness to learn with at times limited academic support at home. Other indicators also include a higher incidence of CFO requests made through the principals, a higher request for Christmas hampers and assistance at Christmas time. Through the pandemic, we've noticed a higher incidence of requests for devices to learn from home. And of course, we always have many requests for clothing. And of course, difficulty with out-of-pocket expenses such as childcare, prescription medication, among other items. Please move to the next slide. Despite these obstacles or challenges, students are nevertheless eager to learn. I'm not sure, Jeff, if it's moving forward. I'll continue. Students are nevertheless eager to learn. We are so fortunate to have many supportive community partnerships that begin to bridge the gap for our students located within these schools. These partners support our children's support schools through clothing donations, school supplies, technology, and financial supports. In addition, our children's support schools are also paired with a sister school from our board. Many of the sister school supports are unique to the needs of the individual schools. For example, specific types of food, technology, school supplies, financial support for guest speakers and field trips, also in-school workshops given the pandemic. Children's Support School also benefit from the support of ONFI, the Ottawa Network for Education, in the form of breakfast programs and also in the form of providing nutritional snacks. In addition, the children's support schools are provided intentional support from various Catholic Education Center departments. For example, we have a new culturally sensitive partner, where Daniela Arietta Galvin, and she provides a variety of supports to assist schools and students in creating inclusive environments, safe space for conversation, promoting leadership opportunities relevant and unique to them, and developing self-advocacy skills and a voice for students. We also have dedicated learning partner support for math and literacy. And this also is additional support for staff in the form of PD, modeling, co-planning and co-teaching, and also targeting some specific groups in numeracy and literacy. There are also targeted mental health supports in the form of mental health workers. And the mental health workers provide whole class sessions and also small group sessions to support and address mental health needs, such as stress, anxiety management, social emotional regulation, and social emotional learning. There are also summer programs, and they are a combination of fun and games with focus on the child's educational development. And they are offered for students through the parents, for the students to explore physical activity, science, technology, engineering, and math, so the STEM programs, also gaming, culinary arts, a variety of activities, also including outdoor sports and visual arts. So it's kind of a camp for a week or for a period of time. We can go to the next one, please. Additional supports also include refurbished technology that has been donated to students for access to curriculum at home. Many students who are in support schools do not have the benefit of having devices at home, and so OCSB students in support schools can receive those. There's also in a variety of additional staffing provided to schools. So some schools have not an additional VP, but a VP, given that their numbers wouldn't normally support a VP. They are granted one. Some schools receive additional resource teacher allocation and also designated EA. There's also supports in the form of snowsuits, hats, and mitts to ensure students stay warm and dry. Many support school students have their first winter ever here in Canada, and so it's a bit of a shock to their system, so we help keep them warm. And thanks to the generous support from our trustees last June, we were also able to provide enhanced outdoor seating with picnic tables purchased for all children's support schools. They are very well used. If we can go to the next slide. And we celebrate community by demonstrating joy and diversity. Many collaborative school projects happen throughout the year in all schools, and also in particular in children's support schools. One example is above left, is the collaboration with artist Claudia Salguero, who has done many cultural murals around the city. The design is about celebrating our community, demonstrating joy and diversity. The picture third from the left certainly demonstrates that joy. The design is, it was a week-long project, and all the students were able to participate in creating this mural. It is an 8 by 12 foot mural mounted in a central stairwell of a children's support school. And the project was supported by additional funds that are provided to CSS schools. If we can move to the next slide, please. Equity resources in action in children's support schools are very, very important. Many equity resources have been provided to children's support schools to support equity initiatives Here are some examples of these resources in action. Students are exploring identity, diversity, and finding and discovering their own voices. It's so important for our students to see themselves reflected in the school community, and so the equity resources definitely help students see themselves and gain their voice. We can move to the next slide, please. Our parents are a huge part of the community and children's support schools. Many of our children's support schools engage the parent community by holding family nights. Pre-pandemic, obviously, was in person, post-pandemic, virtually. And they cover various subjects: numeracy, literacy, mental health, art, just enjoyment. The example above is just 2 areas where parents can come and learn. Parents are given resources to take home. On the left, you see some numeracy resources to promote engagement with their children. They're also provided with ideas and modeling on how to use these to promote, in this particular incident, numeracy. Virtual family nights are also in Scientists in the School, are part of children's support schools. They have been funded by the Cajol In Foundation to support our Family Science Night program. There were 3 virtual sessions, 60 minutes for up to 45 families. All required materials were supplied to the families. There are also virtual paint nights, which was just for the sheer enjoyment of art and celebrating the arts together as a community. And there as well, all materials were provided for families, and the paint night was held virtually, the whole community together. If we can move to the next slide, please. Storybook Ottawa has delivered over 1,500 books to Ottawa children. Most children in our partner schools received their very first book from Storybook Ottawa. The joy and excitement experienced by children when they receive their book is overwhelming. And if we can go to the next slide. Birthday party for baby Jesus. This is a wonderful way to gather as a community. For many students, it is their first time experiencing a North American traditional Christmas dinner. And we have community partners who continue to support our schools with important celebrations such as this. Pre-pandemic, it was in person, and we would have OCSB community join us, in particular our central staff, and they would come together to assist in meal preparation and serving our students, and we would gather in the gym to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Now, this has been done in the last, I guess, 2 years, virtually. Students gather in their classrooms, very much like this, on a meet and break bread to celebrate the birth of Christ. And we look forward to resuming our in-person tradition with this community building in the near future when the pandemic is over. The last slide is about gratitude, and Jumpstart Pedal for Kids is another community partner for which we are grateful. They've provided various sports equipment to students in the school. By working together with our schools, central teams, parents, and community partners, our children's support schools are well supported and exemplify the equity at work.
Thanks, Debbie. And perhaps we won't have a chance to watch the video, but we'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong, then Trustee Moore.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just recently, the ministry announced a package, a plan to address COVID impacts going forward on our students. And one of the items that I was interested in learning more about is the public support for tutoring. Do you have any plans in place, or could you tell us a little bit about how you see public tutoring working into these children's support schools?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's a great question, Trustee Armstrong. You're right, it was just being announced, and the teams will be assigned and working on that for next year. Tutoring is always a positive thing for our students. It provides them the opportunity to practice the skills that they need, as well as catch up on any areas that they may be having trouble with. We will work as a team, of course, as always, to try and put in place a very robust tutoring program, especially in our children's support schools, but right across the system.
Thank you.
Trustee Moore, then Trustee Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Superintendent and Ms. Lloyd. Thank you very much for putting our money to good use, and that the children are outside having a great time. That's the best, isn't it? Just to see the smiles. I want to thank you so much for the equity work that you're doing, and then I see how well-rounded it is with science and math and literacy. I'm just jotting down notes, and it's well-rounded. So where do you see your next steps going? Like, where do you see the money that we have this year taking you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a great question as well. There are multiple ways of spending money. That's never an issue. I know personally that outdoor education is an area that I personally would like to see develop a little bit more. We've discovered by being forced into the outdoors through the pandemic, the impact that nature can have on our students. And so, community gardens, for example, is a great way to promote partnerships between the home and the school, and also address the needs for food in our community. So for me personally, that's where I would like to see the next step go. And of course, that integrates many science activities or lessons, art, all kinds of different cross-curricular potential.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to beg my fellow trustees' indulgence as I become very effusive about my children's support schools. First of all, I do want to congratulate and applaud my fellow trustees and senior administration for always acknowledging the need to differentiate support and allocate budget, acknowledging that support to the schools that are so in need to have these extras. But I really want to applaud the principals and staff at these schools. You walk into children's support schools and, the joy and the teaching and the leading with heart that goes on, I just can't speak highly enough. And I'm just going to highlight one thing is I attended one of the family math nights, and it's the engagement from parents and kids at seeing their teachers and being able to have the manipulatives that they got from the school to be able to engage in the night was very thrilling with the level of enthusiasm. So I just, I hope anyone who might be attending the meeting takes my praise and has a moment of a little bit of a smile as we show our gratitude for the incredible creative work that is done at these schools to ensure that all of our students in our children's support schools can access the curriculum. So thank you so much, Debbie.
Trustee Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Debbie. Good presentation. Just a quick question. I should know this, but I don't know it. How many children's support schools do we have within the system?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Coburn, good question. There's approximately 16 children's support schools and a handful of engagement schools at the higher level. And that is, we do review that.
I have a supplemental, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So Cindy spoke eloquently about some of the programs that are provided, and you've identified the extra resources in terms of human resources, EAs and such. Can you speak a little bit to the difference that makes having extra staff resources to support these schools, maybe?
Yes, many of our students, because of the lower socioeconomic status, often come to us without any prior testing or any prior exposure to schools, and therefore are not school ready. and it can take a year or 2 years to kind of get them just ready to do school in and of itself. So having the extra hands, having the extra expertise in the form of resource goes a long way in supporting our students to develop academically, socially, emotionally. And I do have to say that the extra allocation in the form of the cultural learning partner and the mental health worker has gone a really long way for us during this time with the pandemic and the impacts that it has had. So that extra staff is very much appreciated, especially given that we're all aware of the shortage in staffing and the unfilled absences. So this helps buffer that and kind of creates a more level playing field.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Lawrence.
Thank you to you, Mr. Chair. As usual, Cindy said it more eloquently, so I'll just skip all that part, but it's true. I mean, everything she said. My question is, I remember this was prior to the pandemic. I was in 2 different schools that week. One was the support school, and I was blown away. The principal said it was just in January, just after Christmas, coming back in the new year, and 16 kids had showed up at the door that had come into the country over and were in one of the motels, refugees. Is that still happening now? What school are you in, Debbie, first of all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can identify our children's support school, so I'm sorry I can't divulge that information.
Right, of course.
But yes, it does happen. Actually, the school I was at 4 years ago, on the first day of school, we had 85 students additional to what our board projection was. And this was just a major influx of new students. So that was a bit of my first ever experience as a principal. That was quite an awakening, and it was I learned very much that year. So it is still happening. I don't think to the same extent of 85 new students, but yes, throughout the school year, there's always, almost every day, there's a new registration, whether it's for a week from now or for the next day. So it continues. There is some transiency, like students do move out of the area and new students fill in. So there's a lot of movement.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, because I know you guys are like dogs with bones and you just go after things you need for those kids. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, again, I will echo Trustee Simpson's comments. Thank you for everything you do. I have a number of support schools, and I agree, as you said, that they do need a little bit extra to make sure that the needs are met. And if they do need extra, don't be shy to ask. And I wouldn't put that beyond you and the Board of Trustees is very much well aware that everything isn't equal because they're coming in on an unequal playing field to start. So absolutely agree with you. Thank you for your presentation. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn and Trustee Simpson. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Leading and Learning dated February 16th, 2022, entitled the OCSB Children's Support Schools Acts of Kindness Be Community be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes of the regular board meeting February 8th, 2022. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Armstrong, Trustee McEwen. That the minutes of the regular board meeting of February 8th, 2022 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no unfinished business from previous meetings. There's no trustee motions. Item K, presentation and consideration of committee reports. Item 1, memo from trustee Joanne McEwen, re OSTA minutes of the regular meeting and annual general meeting of December 6, 2021. Trustee McEwen.
Just for receipt.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Mover, please. Trustee Simpson, trustee Warren. That the memorandum from the trustee Joanne McEwen dated February 17, 2022, entitled OSTA minutes of regular board meeting and annual general meeting of December 6th be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 2, memo from the Director of Education re Parent Involved Committee minutes of December 14, 2021. Director D'Amico.
For receipt, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Lawrence, seconded by trustee McEwen. That memorandum from the Director of Education dated February 17, 2022, and the report entitled Parent Involvement Committee Minutes of December 14, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L1, presentation consideration of staff or trustee reports. Memo from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities re Barrhaven South Catholic Elementary School 2023 proposed attendance boundary consultation document. Welcome, Superintendent Bellin and Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair. Through you, it's my pleasure to bring forward a presentation by our Manager Planning and Construction, Mr. Ian Baxter, to initiate the consultation process to create a new attendance boundary for the new Barrhaven South Catholic Elementary School. Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, Superintendent Vala, and good evening, everyone. Good to be here tonight. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Planning and Facilities Group are bringing a report forward this evening containing a proposed attendance boundary for a new elementary school to be opened in the Barrhaven South community. We are seeking approval to proceed with the consultation process and for the use of the attached document to inform parents and families and receive input. This slide is a general location map. The Barrhaven South development area is located south of the Jock River, south of the South Nepean Town Center, and Old Barrhaven as well. The map shows the locations of the 2 existing elementary schools that serve students in Barrhaven South. That would be St. Cecilia and St. Benedict. The site that will contain the new Barrhaven South Elementary School, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in the older part of Barrhaven, and the location of the secondary school that grade 6 students feed to, that would be St. Joseph High School on Greenbank Road. The map also depicts the location of 2 parcels of land in the most southern part of the development that are being considered by the City of Ottawa for inclusion in the expanded urban boundary. Some background regarding Barrhaven South. Planning for the development in this part of the South Nepean dates back to the mid-2000s. Community design plan process took place at that time, and the board identified a need for 3 elementary schools to serve students in the longer term. St. Cecilia was opened in 2013 and serves elementary students residing in Stonebridge West and the eastern part of Half Moon Bay. St. Benedict is located on River Mist Road to the south and was opened in 2016. The school serves elementary students residing in the western part of Half Moon Bay and also the area south of Cambrian Road and west of the existing Greenbank Road. The third and final planned elementary school to serve students residing in this area is the subject of the consultation process and document that you have in front of you this evening. In October 2020, we received notice from the Ministry of Education that capital funding had been approved for the construction of a 507 pupil-placed new Barrhaven South Elementary School. The new school is scheduled to be opened for September 2023 and will also accommodate a purpose-built childcare center. Funding was allocated for this project in order to provide students with local accommodation and to help alleviate enrollment pressures at existing schools. So this slide is a schematic plan showing the layout of the new elementary school that will be built on a site located at the corner of Flagstaff Drive and Main Halyard Lane, generally located in the area north of Cambrian Road and east of Boris O'Kane. It is a 6-acre site that includes a planned outdoor classroom, a garden area, outdoor seating, and street laybys for buses and parent pickup and drop off. As noted earlier, the Barrhaven South development area is currently served by 2 elementary schools, St. Cecilia and St. Benedict. Both of these existing elementary schools are experiencing significant accommodation pressures at the moment. St. Cecilia has a current enrollment of 720 students, a utilization rate of 142%, and 10 portable classrooms on site. The St. Benedict attendance boundary contains a majority of future residential development in the area and is experiencing significant year-to-year increases in enrollment. St. Benedict has a current enrollment of 757 students, a utilization rate of 149%, and 11 portables. For the following school year, St. Benedict is expected to require 15 to 16 portables on site in order to meet classroom needs in advance of the opening of the new school. The new school that will be built is the final planned JK to 6 school to serve elementary students in the area. And grade 6 students attending the above schools feed to St. Joseph High School for grades 7 to 12. This slide is a composite map showing the existing attendance boundaries of the elementary schools that serve the Barrhaven South development area. The St. Cecilia boundary is shown in dark blue. St. Benedict is in light blue, and St. Elizabeth Ann Seton's attendance area north of the Jock River is shown in a rose color on the map. The map also shows the site locations of the new Barrhaven South Elementary School and St. Joseph High School as well. This slide is a map showing the proposed new school attendance area and the attendance boundaries of existing elementary schools impacted by the opening of that new school. The colors of the existing schools are unchanged from the previous slide, and the new Barrhaven South Elementary School attendance boundary is shown in a brownish orange color. The new school is proposed to serve all of the Half Moon Bay area north of Cambrian Road and the area located south of Cambrian Road, extending all the way south to Dundonald Drive and Haiku Street. Students relocated to the new school for September 2023 would come from the attendance boundaries of both St. Benedict and St. Cecilia. A future development area located north of the Jock River and west of Boris O'Kane Road is also proposed to be redirected from St. Elizabeth Ann Seton to the new school. Under the proposal, the new elementary school would have a projected enrollment of 491 students upon opening, a utilization rate of 97%. St. Cecilia's enrollment would be reduced to 458 students, a utilization rate of approximately 90%. For September 2023, enrollment at St. Benedict would be reduced to 623 students, a utilization rate of 123%. And the school at that time would have a need for five portables on site. Similar to previous new elementary schools, the grade structure that is being proposed is a JK to 6 upon opening with a full complement of grades. This will assist with the alleviation of pressures at existing schools and also help to keep families together as well. We are recommending that a consultation process with the 3 impacted school communities take place over the next 4 months in order to receive input regarding the proposed new school attendance boundary and also the proposed boundary modifications to existing schools. In recognition of the COVID-19 pandemic, our standard process may have to be modified to ensure that we are respecting OPH rules around face-to-face gatherings. An in-person public meeting at a school located within the community in May would be our preference, and we're certainly hoping that that does take place. But we may have to pivot to a virtual setting if conditions at the time require it. All other aspects of our typical consultation process would be followed. A recommendation report regarding the proposed new school attendance area and input that we received as a result of the consultation process is anticipated to be brought to the board for approval in June. Implementation of the approved changes to boundaries would be effective upon the opening of the new school, and that is currently scheduled for, again, for September 2023. If there are questions from trustees, staff are here to answer them this evening.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions and comments? Trustee Warren, then Trustee Moore.
Thanks, through Mr. Chair. Great presentation, Superintendent Baxter. We're looking forward to this for sure because we do have an overflow of students and growth in the Barrhaven area. One thing that and maybe I missed it was the bell times. Are the bell times going to be slightly offset to help with OSTA, the moving buses, or have we put that much thought into it yet?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and in response to Trustee Warren's question. So the bell times would be set by OSTA during their planning process leading up to that 2023, September 2023 date. And certainly that would be one of the pieces that I think OSTA would account for in terms of staggering start times in that area. And of course, as we know, those routes are sort of set with the public board in mind as well, and in terms of optimizing the routes. So.
Okay. Trustee Warren, then Trustee Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Baxter. I'm just wondering, I don't know this area very well at all, but I'm hoping that the school, wherever it's located on Flagstaff there, has ample parking on the street for parents, because I'm just looking at it as in terms of we don't have enough buses now. It looks like we're going to need some buses there anyway. And is this part of the planning process to look at how efficiently we can do drop-offs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and in response to the trustee comment and question, we certainly, during the design, in terms of the design, the design of the site includes laybys, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of street laybys for buses for parent pickup and drop off. That is a piece that is challenging to fully account for, as you can probably well imagine, in terms of some of these areas. The school site is located certainly within a residential area, a number of local roads in close proximity. So, that's sort of, we certainly take that into account, especially on the elementary side as well, when we're, when we begin these processes and we are looking to locate those sites.
May I ask a supplemental, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
It's sort of related to this, Mr. Baxter. Is this an area of the city that has pathways leading into a school ground to maybe put traffic off on different streets?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe this particular site has pedestrian pathways, attached or sort of connecting to the school site itself.
Okay, thank you very much.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair, confirming that it's Things in Tuesday today, 2 planners today, correct? Okay, I think it is. Things in Tuesday today. Okay. My question. Okay. My question is, very excited to hear about the importance of outdoor spaces. You mentioned that you're planning for an outdoor classroom. I wanted to know a bit more about that, and also to know whether you will be incorporating wireless in that area.
Perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer some of the site development piece. So thank you, Trustee Armstrong, for that question. As far as the classroom goes, we try to set up a space where children can assemble in a full class setting. So you'll notice, I think, in the previous one of the slide decks, you see like a circular shape where a bunch of rocks or logs or whatever are used with some sort of presentation opportunity so that kids can work together. So between that and trying to provide outdoor activities such as maybe gardens or some of the plantings that we try to do within the yard or work with our communities, we certainly try to enhance the yard for that outdoor learning environment. As far as at this time, we don't have schools with the outdoor Wi-Fi systems, and there's mixed successes to that. It is something that we will be looking forward to in the years to come. We had requested some funding in the past through the CVRIS funding, which we didn't receive, but it's something that we will pursue in the future.
Thank you.
Before I go back to Trustee Warren, is there any of the trustees haven't asked a question? Seeing none, Trustee Warren.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on the capacity of going into it. You're saying it's going to be around 90-ish% occupancy. Then is there any concern, because that area is still largely developing and it's all young families moving there, is there concern that on opening day or a year later that we're going to be over capacity already? Is there a chance that we can forecast or plan ahead to build for a larger capacity, or is just based on what we proposed to the minister?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and in response to Trustee Warren's question. So with respect to the projected enrollment for the new Barrhaven school that's opening, I think that's the school that you're referencing in terms of the 90%. So I think 90% is the utilization rate based on the projected enrollment for September 2023. If you look 5 years out, I think it's just above full capacity. So it's likely, again, depending on what we end up with under this proposal, though, it's not going to be a school that will have those kinds of significant pressures under the proposal. It should be relatively steady and gradual in terms of the impact of that development as it moves forward.
Just a quick supplemental, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Knowing the area quite well, the next 3 to 4 years, right now it's all farm field. Next 3 to 4 years, there's going to be a large capacity of new families there. I wouldn't be surprised on day one if we're over capacity already with this school. And I guess having said that, I guess the only other outcome we can have is just having portables on to offset for the overflow.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, if you look at the numbers for St. Benedict, quite a bit of that development is in that southern sort of southwestern sort of part. And so if you look at St. Benedict under the proposal sort of does carry the burden, a bit more of the burden, I think, based on this proposal. But the 3 schools, 507 pupil place schools in combination over the longer term, they should be that should be sufficient capacity to accommodate the level of enrollment that we will have from a longer term perspective. Now you will have peaks, I think we had mentioned earlier on that development sort of commenced in this area sort of in the mid 2000s, 2006, 2007. So you're talking about a long period of time even to get to 2023. So there's a blend of sort of more mature and future development still to come, and that plays out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Baxter.
If I may add also to the commentary by Manager Baxter, the schools are all built with extra capacity for not only portables but also washroom infrastructure. So if in fact the numbers do get large, we do anticipate it. We know that over the longer period of time, we do have new families, young families in those suburbs that develop, that with time they do stabilize, and the numbers, the yield rates from those communities go down. And certainly it's always a balancing act between how large the capacity we build up front versus having a risk where you have an over capacity space where it hinders our growth in the next areas of the city that need accommodation. So it's always a balancing act as to how large you build it, and certainly with a number like nearly full at the opening, and we certainly have confidence that we'll be able to manage it with a modest number of portables as that community grows and the next one grows again. So I think that it's a well laid out plan, and we do make accommodations to make sure that those portable spaces, will serve the students well, and that they are built better than they were basically 25 years ago. There's a whole different approach to them. So we are taking into consideration extra washrooms, make sure that the gyms and are large enough for all those kids, having those outdoor classrooms, so we have the right spaces for all those kids, even with the larger numbers.
Thank you.
Trustee Whitted.
Thank you, Chair, for Superintendent Valor, Mr. Baxter. Just turning our attention for a second to capital cost. You both delivered a presentation about construction cost overruns at a previous board meeting, and I'm just wondering if we have a sense as we spec out and move to the build phase of this project, what we might be looking at given the current supply chain and access to materials, kind of, if we're heading down the path of significant cost overruns from what the ministry envelope funding was, or if we're seemingly fairly well on track with the money that's been provided.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I suppose I can start, and then Superintendent Vala may want to chime in. So we're in the middle of that process right now in terms of working with the ministry to get what they call approval to proceed. And that's really the figure that is estimated for the tender, the construction tender. That's the estimated budget for construction tendering. So in terms of whether the ministry benchmark construction costs are sufficient, they aren't. The combination of, we have had to really work very tightly with the architect on the design side to be as efficient as we can. And even in doing so, we are certainly short and will require likely the use of some additional funds in terms of unencumbered reserves, capital reserves, and additional capital priorities from the ministry. So I'm not sure whether Superintendent Vala wants to add something, but certainly that's a huge challenge. They're on the capital side, they're really for school boards. Right now, the challenge is not only the timely receipt of capital funding, but really the amount of capital funding that we receive.
If I may just add to Manager Baxter's statements, at this point we know that the allocations from the province are anywhere between 15 to 20% underfunded under benchmarks, and they've conceded that through our discussions with them for our what they call ATP, approval to proceed, for our tender. We've tapped into at this point educational development charges for some of the extraordinary site costs. We're also looking for they are supplementing some projects with COVID dollars associated with the construction industry and some of the costs they've seen. At this point, we do have an ATP submitted to the province, which is greater than the actual sole construction benchmark allocation. So we've tried to draw on eligible funding that is available. So like again, unencumbered previous capital through savings and other projects, and about $2 million is being added to this project. Plus, like I said, the EDCs, plus the request for additional funding through some of the COVID measures that they have. And at this point, the sooner we can get the tender, which we're waiting for the approval from the ministry, certainly we know that prices through the winter are better than prices in the middle of the summer. So at this point, we're hopeful that the ministry will permit us to go to tender. At this point, I'm hopeful that we've carried enough in our budget so that the tender amount is less than budget. If not, we may need to go back to the ministry and look at other approaches for additional funding. We're hopeful that our track record in the past has been able to make it work, and we'll see where it all ends up in the next few months.
Mr. Chair, supplemental, if I could, just through you, if I could maybe ask Superintendent Vala, perhaps even the director, if we get down the road to a point, and this sort of dovetails off of Trustee Warren's question, if we get down the road to a point where that pressure is significant and the costs are really eating into student space that would allow us to grow key areas of that school or have the right space, even to grow with portables, could we count on you guys to bring that back to the board, provide us with a bit of background if there's something that we can do as a board to help support that? Not sure if there will be, but it would just be good for us to know as we go through this process, because this is going to happen a few more times, in the coming years as we are building a few new schools, and hopefully the next report, the capital priorities that we submit, we get a couple of those funded this year as well. It would just be great to know if we can support any of these things along the way to make sure that we have the best student experience possible in our buildings.
Thank you. Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just confirming, I heard that you said there are 2 potential sites. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. If you're referring to the site that will contain the new Barrhaven Elementary School site, or new Barrhaven Elementary School, there's only one site, and it is at the corner of Flagstaff and Main Halyard in South Nepean.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. I have a mover as Trustee Warren, a seconder, please. Trustee Armstrong. That the memorandum of the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities dated February 16, 2022, entitled New Barrhaven South Catholic Elementary School 2023, proposed attendance boundary consultation document be received, and the proposal contained therein would form the basis for public comment, and that potentially impacted school communities and parent councils be advised of the proposal and the consultation process, and provided the avenues to submit their feedback, and that following the completion of the public consultation process, a recommendation regarding the proposals be brought back to the Board of Trustees for a final decision. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 2, memo from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities again, read 2022-2023 capital priority submission. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we bring forward the staff recommendation for the proposed list of school projects as part of the new submission of capital priorities as requested by the Ministry of Education about 3 weeks ago. Our manager, Mr. Baxter, will be providing the details of school priorities to be submitted to the ministry at the end of this week. Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, Superintendent Vala. Through you, Mr. Chair, on February 4th, just recently, 3 weeks ago, as the superintendent mentioned, we received notice from the Ministry of Education regarding the launch of a 2022-2023 capital priorities program. You'll recall that the most recent previous submission to the province occurred in May of 2021. So capital funding in the province is allocated to school boards for projects such as new schools and additions through the aforementioned capital priorities program. The ministry is asking school boards to identify a maximum of 5 projects that meet program eligibility criteria and are expected to be required for opening no later than the 2026-2027 school year. The request includes the identification of childcare centers planned in conjunction with new schools. This request is unique It includes specific direction that requires school boards to submit a minimum of 2 new projects in order to have previously unfunded projects considered. By definition, it therefore restricts us to submitting only 3 of our 2021 projects that did not receive approval for funding. This request is short. The deadline for school boards to submit business cases to support capital funding requests is this Friday, February 25th. Specific areas that the ministry will be monitoring once again as part of its evaluation process include the use of repeat designs and modular construction methods, the meeting of benchmark construction costs, and school and area utilization rates, both pre and post construction. In response to last year's 2021 ministry request, we submitted 6 priorities for consideration. We received funding for the construction of a new elementary school to serve students residing in the Finley Creek area. The school is tentatively scheduled for a September 2024 opening. We did not receive funding for the remaining 5 projects that were submitted. In addition to St. Philip Elementary School in the village of Richmond, 2 new elementary schools, one in Riverside South and the other in the Mer Bleu development area of Orleans, a new secondary school in Fernbank, and a gym addition to St. Isidore. With this round, we once again received confirmation from the ministry that it will not consider projects that involve school consolidation and the completion of a pupil accommodation review. And this means that, unfortunately, although it continues to be a capital priority of the board and an important one, the St. Rita and St. Augustine replacement school project will have to wait to be considered for capital funding from the ministry. In keeping with the ministry memorandum, we are limiting our 2022 submission to a total of 5 projects. 3 of these 5 are 2021 capital priorities which did not receive funding, but where we have the most pressing accommodation needs. A new secondary school in Fernbank, a new elementary school in Riverside South, and a new elementary school in Mer Bleu. We have also included 2 new projects with our submission. A planned addition to St. Philip Elementary School in Richmond with a revised request for 12 classrooms instead of 10. And that revision makes it a new, in quotes, a new project within this process. And a new elementary school to serve students in the northern portion of Fernbank for the 2026-2027 school year. A new secondary school in the Fernbank area was identified as a capital priority of the board with our May 2021 ministry submission. But as mentioned, it was not approved for funding. Ongoing major developments in Canada West, the village of Richmond, and Fernbank have served to place significant pressure on space needs at both Sacred Heart and Holy Trinity High Schools. Between the 2 schools, there is a current need for 42 portable classrooms, and enrollment at the 2 schools is a combined 921 students above permanent capacity. Based on current enrollment projections in 5 years' time, that deficit of permanent space will increase to 1,422 students. Both high schools are nearing their maximum site capacity for the placement of additional portable classrooms. In addition, the gap in time for new secondary schools from the receipt of funding to an opening date in the community is longer than that of an elementary school, between 4 and 5 years. The last secondary school that we opened was St. Francis Xavier High School in Riverside South in 2009. We are at a point where capital funding for the next one is a priority. A new elementary school in Riverside South is also one of our unfunded capital priorities from the 2021 submission. Over the past 5 years, major subdivisions are being approved for the area south of Armstrong Road. New homes are being built and occupied, and we are experiencing significant increases in enrollment. The designated elementary school for all of Riverside South currently is St. Jerome, located on Spratt Road. The school is projected to have 737 students, a utilization rate of 146%, and a need for 12 portables on site for this coming September 2022. With the recent rate of local residential development expected to continue, student enrollment and the need for classroom space will increase, placing significant accommodation pressures on the St. Jerome site. In the past 2 to 3 years, development within Mare Bleue and the former Gloucester portion of the East Urban Centre has begun to put pressure on student accommodation at the 2 elementary schools designated to serve these areas. Our Lady of Wisdom and St. Kateri are both operating well above full capacity, with enrollments projected to continue to increase. We are recommending that a need for a new elementary school in the Mare Bleue area be identified within our 2022-2023 capital priority submission in order to serve students locally and to alleviate pressures at both of the above schools in a timely fashion. We've spoken in the past of the need to provide student accommodation for the growth that is coming and happening already to the village within the village of Richmond. This project was included in both the 2019 and 2021 submissions. For the 2022 process, we are recommending increasing the size of the requested addition from 10 to 12 classrooms. This additional space will help account for an increase made to the residential unit potential of the village with the conversion of some industrial lands to residential uses. Finally, we are also recommending that a new elementary school in the northern part of Fernbank be included in our 2022 submission. We have spoken recently about the rate of development that is occurring in this part of the city. And every process that we go through, every capital priorities process that we go through is a new opportunity for staff to review and reassess our needs. And the forecasted timing for this project fits in with a planned opening date of no later than 2026, 2027. One of the criteria for inclusion as a capital priority. I think with that, I will conclude the presentation this evening. And if there are questions regarding the report, staff are here to answer them tonight.
Thank you very much again. Questions or comments from the trustees? Trustee Moore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Baxter, I know that St. Isidore's gym, I'm going to be asked questions about it and where its placement on the list is. You just didn't drop it off and erase it or anything, did you?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I think I mentioned, certainly in the report, it's mentioned that, you know, those board approved capital priorities that we are not able to submit, whether it be due to the fact that we don't have people accommodation review guidelines, or whether because the ministry in this unique process this time limited us to 3 unfunded previously submitted. It doesn't change the fact that that's a capital priority that is supported by staff.
The parents will be happy to hear that. Thank you.
Trustee Coburn.
Yep. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for this good presentation. I clearly support these capital priorities. Can you speak to the numbering or the priorities? So we're submitting 5 different capital priorities. Do we basically prioritize them from 1 to 5? So are you looking at 1 being the most, I guess the one we feel is most urgent, to number 5 being the one that's least urgent?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that's accurate in terms of this process. Again, we were forced to remove and to not submit a couple of important projects. But I think it's accurate to say that the numbering that you see in terms of the projects this time does reflect sort of a degree of pressure and the difference between the sites in terms of Fernbank. I think we've mentioned before that we are literally running out of classroom space, the ability to put portable classrooms on those sites to accommodate that growth. We also know we have a longer bridge period, a longer interval even if we were to receive funding right now or funding within the next few months, we would still have a good period of time to get to that new school opening in the community. So all of those kinds of pieces are sort of incorporated, I think, in terms of the numbering of the projects.
If I may add as well, Trustee Coburn, the ministry also has indicated that although we may not include projects that were on our previous submissions, they were going to review those as well through the business case analysis. So just because they're not in the list doesn't necessarily mean that they will not look at them. It's just that they're asking for us to give, in the first 3 or 5 are the old ones, and the number 4 and 5 have to be new ones. So, and again, there is a little bit of strategy involved in that. By having a high school first, it is a big win for us to get it earlier. It's a big outlay for them, but it's probably the one that needs the most amount of time for us to open a school. So I think that there's some strategy involved with it. Our number 2 school, there's no doubt about the fact that the Riverside South School is under enormous pressures as well with their accommodations. And certainly we'd be happy with any one of these if they pick it. We know that in the past, province hasn't just picked order that we have. They may cherry pick. So as long as I think the information's there, it's really up to them to make those decisions.
Good, thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess, Mr. Superintendent Vala, it just seems to me that within 1 week, we heard from the ministry about getting this list together. Today we get here, seems like about a week later, that we have to have all this paperwork together. And you have the St. Philip's revision. Seems to me that would be a lot of work to prepare that. And it's got to be in by Friday. Was it a bit of a rush, a bit of a race? Is it done?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. You're absolutely right, Trustee Armstrong. It is a huge undertaking and a lot of pressure on our planning group. Fortunately, some of the business cases are a bit of a repeat because there are templates that we use. So we were able to just leave the first remaining 3 with the previous cases that we had submitted. And of course, the Richmond addition to St. Philip's, it was just a modification to that. The only one that really required some major work would have been the Fernbank North site. And again, based on the previous templates, it makes it a little bit easier. Thankfully, we've just recently gone through, the projections and accommodation reviews, the boundary review, attendance boundaries. So it's certainly some of that work was already done in advance. But yes, absolutely, this is a real hardship. I don't know how other school boards are going to do it. It's my hat's off to our planning group, especially Manager Baxter, for getting such a large amount of work done in such a short period of time.
I'm sorry to hear that, but thank you for the hard work.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a mover for the motion, please? Trustee Whitted and Trustee Lawrence. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Planning Facilities entitled 2022-2023 Capital Priorities Submission dated February 16, 2022 be received and the information contained therein be approved for submission to the ministry. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 3, memo from the Superintendent of Human Resources, Child Abuse Prevention and Reporting Policy Development and Process for Approval. Welcome, Superintendent McCabe and Ms. Cameron.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Tonight, I am pleased to be joined by Lisa Cameron, Principal of Safe, Accepting, and Inclusive Schools. Lisa has been working diligently on a new policy that we will be bringing forward as part of the normal policy review plan in March. But the purpose for tonight's presentation, Mr. Chair, is to provide trustees with an update on Lisa's work thus far and to provide information on our staff's participation in a Canadian Centre for Child Protection program that Lisa will explain. The actual policy is still in the draft stage, and part of this policy development will be to engage all stakeholders, including trustees, in the very near future. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and at this time I will turn it over to Lisa.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Superintendent McCabe. As Superintendent McCabe has stated, this presentation will be on the work done thus far on the draft policy of child sexual abuse prevention and reporting. Next slide, please. So OCSB has always had policies around child protection, and this policy does not replace past practice. However, it does enhance our reporting procedures. This policy will formalize the process and document suspicion and/or child sexual abuse. This policy is also in line with the new anti-sex trafficking policy mandated by the Ministry of Education this year that is currently being worked on as well. In July of 2021, I completed the Commit to Kids training, and most specifically the Module 7 on how to develop policy for organizations that serve children. And Module 7 focused on outlining boundaries, expected behavior for employees, and outlining interactions and activities with children, which included electronic communication. So that you know, approximately 95% of all OCSB staff completed the Commit to Kids training modules over the 3 professional development days in October, November, and December. Reporting misconduct creates accountability. It holds adults to a high standard, can prevent sexual abuse, and can support professional development within our school board. I reached out to several school boards across Ontario, and I had an opportunity to compare similar policies for best practices, scope and sequences, and policies that use the recommendations for from the Centre for Child Protection. These were the school boards that I was looking to compare these policies, similar policies. As part of the recommendations going forward, and part of the onboarding process, Human Resources will track those who have completed Commit to Kids. Completion of the modules will act as a declaration of their understanding of the responsibilities for ensuring child protection. Each year, new staff will complete these modules either through the school board or through the College of Teachers, depending on the employee affiliation. We will also work with the Canadian Centre for Child Protection once the final OCSB policy is completed and have it embedded in the Commit to Kids future training modules specific to our school board. Human Resources also created a draft online form for all staff to report suspected or known child sexual abuse. In terms of the principal and the supervisor recommendations, they will ensure this policy and procedure is reviewed annually with all staff, volunteers, and school councils. Offer programs of education and tools for students for issues of grooming, disclosure, and reporting abuse. Kids in the Know is a national safety education program and is connected to Ontario curriculum. Currently, we are targeting the grade 4s and focusing, identifying benefits and the risks of the internet. Students will be able to respond safely to situations that present risk online. All grade 4 classes will receive the curriculum both in French and English in grade 4. We will also, there are many schools in our intermediate and high school already participating in the Kids in the Know program, and next year we will also be supplying the resources for those staff and the intermediate and secondary level as well. The online reporting form will generate school location, the date, and the employee name who will be reporting. The report will automatically be received by the principal or supervisor for investigation. After the investigation, the principal and supervisor will respond through Part B of the form to the reporter. And this is similar to the Safe Schools form that we currently have. It automatically generates a Form B that the principal or supervisor would then respond to. If the reporter is not satisfied with the outcome, there will be a mechanism to which the report can be sent to the superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Chair and trustees. Through you, if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. Trustee Armstrong, then Trustee Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at the draft policy and under number 4, specific directives. And it states in part A, creating a culture of awareness about grooming and child sexual abuse. So as a teacher, I'm trying to get my head around this. How would I, as a teacher, establish if another teacher is grooming?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Trustee Armstrong. The Commit to Kids modules are very intense modules, and those are exactly the things that the teachers and all staff have learned about through the 3 professional development days and received a certificate at the end. So they have to do, throughout it, there's quizzes and there's scenarios, and they have to be able to complete them with the knowledge that they've learned on all of those topics.
Supplemental? Mr. Chair?
Yes, we're not debating the procedures and everything else. We're just getting an introduction, and we brought to Policy and Procedures Committee to have input.
Can I have a supplemental question?
If it's under those parameters.
I'll try. So it's just this idea of grooming, it seems as though, would you say...
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think it's pretty clear that the point of the evening is to discuss the process around policy development, not to get in the weeds on the draft policy. Trustees will have an opportunity to do that at a later date, as will other stakeholders in the system. So I'm just asking that we focus on the process around policy development versus the weeds of the policy tonight, please.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So are you responding to Mr. Whittock? He's interceded.
Is your question to policy and procedures on this policy? Don't get into the weeds, please, with specific questions, because it's only going out to get feedback. It hasn't been decided yet.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Trustee Simpson, then Trustee Moore, and then Trustee Coburn.
For you, Mr. Chair, Lisa, I commend you on your work on this. It's extremely important work. I guess my question surrounds the investigation piece. Our principals and superintendents are not trained forensic investigators, and there are very specific protocols around investigating potential sexual abuse. Is the policy going to include something about the responsibility when someone discloses to you what next steps are? This is my concern, that we don't want to taint any future criminal investigations by people interfering with the interview process.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Trustee Simpson. Absolutely. There will be, obviously, as Mr. Chair has pointed out, there will be an opportunity for the trustees and the other stakeholders to look at the policy. Once the policy is final, there will be some training and some professional development with the supervisors and principals on how to report. One thing, you're absolutely right, if there's a police investigation, and they'll be working closely with HR as well as CAS, which is an automatic call when there's the suspicion of child sexual abuse. So some of that will be out of the hands of the principal, but in the hands of the HR and the Ottawa Police and CAS.
Trustee Moore?
Sorry, it's been 2 years. I don't know my own name. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lisa, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Hopefully not through a screen next time. So this is a lot of work to just go through everything you've been through, to read all the different policies, to look at the latest things coming in, the new programs. But I'm just looking at, how does this weave with the programs we already have, like Samaritans of the Digital Highway, which by no means cover grooming or any of the other activities, but they touch lightly on some of the internet aspects.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Trustee Moore. Absolutely. This is going to be an additional add-on. And to be quite honest, the previous Safe Schools principal had already started the groundwork. There are many schools using the Kids in the Know already, and at very young grades. The curriculum goes from kindergarten to grade 12. And our hope is to have that implemented and support the teachers in implementing that curriculum as well, as it would be an addition. I mean, of course, we're doing great things already with our students, but this would be an extra add-on as well.
You might have to put a bibliography at the end of your policy.
Trustee Coburn?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if you could expand a little bit on the duty to report. So I think what I saw today was somebody would fill out a form and it would go to either their principal or their supervisor. Can you expand a little bit on how that's going to work and the, I guess, the obligation of people in a supervisory position to report these sorts of incidents?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent McCabe, you might want to answer.
Absolutely, I can help out there for sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's one of the key pieces of this new policy and new protocols is that opportunity for feedback and to make sure information gets to the right people in a timely manner. So this is where in the development, we need to work on exactly getting the input from all of the experts in the field to make sure we're getting the right information to the right people. So who needs to know versus who wants to know, who must know, is all going to be part of the training when the information comes in. We recognize the importance of looping back to the original person who's brought the complaint forward. We want to make sure that they are looped back in, that they get the feedback that they're required, and that they have full knowledge of where the information went. And then as the process goes, we want to make sure the information lands with the experts to know, as Lisa has said, Principal Cameron has said, CAS or the police, it may be board psychologists, the proper staff need to know. And we would ensure in this process of reporting that those steps are really carefully covered.
Can I have a supplemental?
Go ahead.
So what I'm going to suggest is clearly it's important that we get back to staff, but what's more important is that it actually gets reported. And so my concern, I've raised this previously, my concern is as these issues get brought forward, that there's an obligation to report them at what I'll call a senior level within the organization, not a decision as to report it or not, or try to deal with it internally. I think Trustee Simpson has identified that some of our staff are maybe not trained in that sort of respect. So again, it's just, I know you guys are developing the policy, but I think it's that duty to report. So if I report something up the line, I need to make sure that I have that recorded and reported by that individual, that it's not optional on their end.
To you, Mr. Chair, if I could just quickly respond, I fully support the comment and think that, again, we're going to continue to seek input from trustees, from all stakeholders. So you should see in its development that exactly what Trustee Coburn is saying does get developed as part of the plan. So thank you for the comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Trustee Woodard and Trustee Coburn. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Human Resources dated February 15, 2022, entitled Child Abuse Prevention and Reporting Policy Development and Process for Approval be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 4, memo from the Superintendent of Human Resources, Human Resources Health and Safety updates.
Good evening. Sorry, Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening again. And now I am pleased to be joined by Chantal Mazeral, who is our Coordinator of Health and Safety for the board. Chantal will be able to give some general updates on initiatives that have carried on throughout the pandemic, and also provide an update on the status of our automated external defibrillators. And these are in all of our school board facilities. At this time, I will now turn it over to Chantal. Thanks, Chantal.
Welcome, Chantal.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. And thank you, Superintendent McCabe. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to just provide you like a quick health and safety update, and I'll go more in depth in the automated external defibrillator program and give you an overview of our program. Thank you, Jeff. Can I have next slide? A few highlights that we are quite proud of, like even though that we had a few challenges during COVID-19, we made great progress in our training program, our health and safety training program. We overcame a few challenges for our in-person training, especially due to the public measures and the lockdowns and staffing. We were still able to offer our in-person training for standard first aid, nonviolent crisis intervention, and our Joint Health Safety Committee certification for our members. We also developed multiple online custom training that follow our policies and our guidelines, and that were made for the roles and responsibility of our staff members. So we developed a further workplace balance, more in-depth workplace balance and harassment module. We also developed the COVID-19 awareness module, a few smaller module like step ladder safety, concussion awareness, and also machine guarding and hot work, just to name a few. We are quite proud to have obtained the Ministry Chief Prevention Officer approval for our Joint Health and Safety Committee certification training, which is a huge safe costing like to our budget. So we are now able as a board to offer this training in-house without going to external providers. So both of our trainers are capable of giving this certification, which is a huge saving to our board. We are also developing the Chief Prevention Officer approval for working at heights, which is going to be great for our maintenance staff members and a few of our teachers. We also made a few upgrades to our automated external defibrillator, which I will talk about a little bit later. And we've developed multiple guidelines and implemented them during COVID-19 as well. Next slides, please. Just a quick overview of our emergency response training. So for standard first aid, for instance, the regulation tells us that the workplace needs to have 1 to 2 first aider per site. Our board well exceeds this requirement because right now we are sitting at 454 trained employees. Obviously, with 2 years of COVID and lockdowns, this number is a little bit lower than expected because we had to lower the number of people that we can train in an in-person training. But it gives us approximately an average of elementary school of 3 people that are trained, and an average number of trained staff for high school about 13. We also expanded our training program for the opioid overdose response to not only include our principals and BPs, but also include our administrative assistants and also volunteer teachers in the naloxone administration. This year, Ottawa Public Health was able to offer this training virtually to many of our staff in high school and intermediate. We also continued with the nonviolent crisis intervention training, and from September to December, we train approximately 159 employees. The goal is for us to be able to train all of our educational assistants in our board, which is going to be much easier when COVID-19 pandemic is over. Next slide, please. A little bit on our AED program. So in 2017, when I started with the board, we did a thorough review of our AED program. And I'm proud to say that since 2019, we have replaced over 74 of our units of the AED Plus model to the new AED Zoll 3. Why we chose the AED Zoll 3 is because of a few features and benefits, especially in elementary. So this unit only uses 1 unipads that with a quick click of a button, you can change from a child to an adult. It also has a huge LED screen, which will feature how much are you doing your compression, the depth of the compression, and also provide you with prompts of how you do your CPR. and it's all automated. Currently, we have 91 AEDs in our board. We still have 15 units to be replaced of the old AED Plus model, which we expect changing for the next school year budget. And we're also auditing all of our high school to add an extra AED to all of our high school, because we know that they're much bigger and we want to ensure that the staff members can reach them quite quickly. This year we did add a few additional due to St. Josephine Virtual and Blessed Carlo, and also we noticed that St. Pius X had an extra little gymnasium that could benefit of an extra an extra AED. Next slide, please. The maintenance of our AEDs is done in-house, so we check them monthly through Track My AED. Each school has a staff member that is in charge of doing the monthly check, and they are trained to do so. We also have an AED program manager that is in charge of ensuring that all of our AED are rescue ready. And we also do annual audits by the health and safety team. So usually this happens over the summer to ensure that all of our AED are ready to go for the new school years. We also have a few spares at the board office. So if one is actually used for an emergency procedure, we can actually quickly switch them around so the school doesn't stay without an AED for the day. Next slide, please. Our training officer is available to train all staff as a need basis. So we have done through the staff meeting. We also have done this through the personal development days. We do this during the standard first aid training sessions. We also have the videos that are posted on our training portal, online training portal, that is available to all staff. So everybody can have the training if they need to. Next slide, please. And this is just to show you the guidelines and the resources for staff that we have on our health and safety staff portal. So we have an AED guidelines, and we have a few videos, a few resources on how to change the battery, how to change the pads, etc. I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Chantal, for your presentation. Trustee Simpson.
I have kind of a two-part question. So for the opioid overdose response kits, has any thought been given to putting those kits into schools that are in more vulnerable areas? Because I know that community members do sometimes wander in need of help in those particular schools, and to have a kit like that would probably be very useful. So the first question is, has any thought been put into schools in very vulnerable areas, elementary schools, having those kits?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Simpson, this is a really good question. I would be more than happy to look into this. We did include multiple kits in adult high schools that are in more vulnerable areas. But I think this is a great opportunity to look at if we should add more kits in those elementary school and train our staff in responding.
Okay, thank you. And the second part to my question is, our nonviolent crisis intervention, I see that 159 employees are already certified, and you are looking to train all EAs. Are you prioritizing EAs that work with children that have more self-regulation issues, to have them trained first?
Through Mr. Chair, Trustee Simpson, the 159 employees that are trained, that have been trained this year, is not a total of the amount of people of staff members that are trained. We probably have over 1,000 staff members that are trained in nonviolent crisis intervention, and we do give priority to the schools that have more problems and more behaviors that they have to attend to. Absolutely.
Trustee Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to sort of build on Trustee Simpson's point about the overdose kits, naloxone kits specifically, and on some of our secondary sites, do we currently have multiple kits staged across the site? Because I recall there's incidents in another district where the kit was far away from where the incident occurred, perhaps the other end of the school in an office. And, just the timeliness of that response wasn't there. So just give us a sense of like the AEDs, how they're spread out across the school and available on a more rapid basis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer Trustee Whitted. We only have kits right now in the administration office. Especially that we had only trained principals and vice principal and mostly administration office staff members. We thought that it would be best to keep the kits near the AEDs because you have to actually grab the AEDs at the same times when you actually bring the naloxone kit with you and the first aid kits. We haven't looked to see in proximity if we should actually have kits elsewhere in the school, and with who. We would have to leave it with someone that would be able to inspect that kit on a monthly basis.
Okay, supplemental. Yeah, maybe to Trustee Simpson's point, that's something we can maybe look at. I know there has to be labor partner buy-in and all that sort of stuff for these types of things, but I'm just thinking we have some very large sites that are complex and multiple levels and that sort of thing. And, to sort of have maybe one kit or one AED located just in one spot might not be the safest option for some of our bigger sites. So it'd be great if we could, look at the viability of potentially having multiple spread across the facility.
Through Mr. Chair, we will most likely look at all of these aspects when we do our audits. So we plan to do audits in the high school in the near future to see where the AD could be placed in the school and calculate the time that it takes to actually get into the office, and we can look at that at the same time.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder, please? Trustee Simpson and Trustee McEwen. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Human Resources dated February 15th, 2022, entitled Human Resources Health and Safety Updates be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Item 5, memo from the Associate Director of Education, read proposed school year calendar 2022-2023. Ms. Donahue, welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to just speak for a moment to my memo. I won't read the memo or go over all the calendars. You have them in front of you. In terms of the process, I think as the trustees know, we always consult with our committee, the school year calendar committee, which is made up of wide representation, including our employee groups. We also have always, in the past, conferred with our coterminous board. We felt that the two English boards should have a similar schedule, in terms of March break and Christmas break. This year, we did receive a lot of feedback from our parents and from our staff that because the two French boards asked for a modified calendar for this current school year, they had a different Christmas break than what the Ministry of Education had recommended, and that was different than what the two English boards have. So we added a new step to our process this year, and I met with my counterpart, either the superintendent or the associate director, in all three Ottawa boards, and the four of us met and agreed that the version of the calendar that you as a board of trustees is seeing has the same Christmas break on the other three school boards as well. So, hopefully that all of the school boards are at the same spot in their process, and they will all get support from their board of trustees. But we did all ask for the modified schedule or the modified calendars that you see in front of you. And so, as you will note, the Christmas officially the break starts on December 26th, but that means that the students and staff would work until the 23rd, the 24th and 25th are of course the weekend, and our calendars just shows the weekdays in terms of holidays. There is also, I think, my colleague who caught this on the list of important dates. I believe in your memo, it may say Friday, September 4th. I apologize. That should be Friday, September 2nd. So it's a board designated holiday for our education staff in the sense that, and we decided on this because the Principals, Vice Principals Association, the union groups, Awakta and CUPE recommended that when we were having a PD day prior to the start of the school year, as we have in the past, that they preferred the Thursday. So I do apologize for that. But Mr. Chair, that is my added comments to what is in front of you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Trustee Armstrong.
Just if you could, through you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent, could you extrapolate a bit more on the June 29th, 2023, the board priority multiple theme day, all panels, what that entails?
I can, through you, Mr. Chair. All of the input that we've received from the Ministry we have not yet received all of the input we need to plan our PD days. So the multiple themes means that we have particular flexibility in terms of seeing the priority. Since this memo was put together and since I met with the committee, we have received a little bit more information. And so I believe I have until August 15th, if my memory serves correctly, to give the specific details of the PA days to the Ministry of Education. So I can bring that back. There'll be more forthcoming, or there'll be more information on that. But the information did not all mesh prior to this deadline, which is March 1st to submit it.
Thank you.
Trustee Lawrence, Moore, then Coburn.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Associate Director Donahue, I just noticed that there's no Christian Community Day coming this year, or did I miss it?
No, there is, and that may have been my error. That is the November 18th PD Day.
Oh, November. Oh, okay. So it's not before Thanksgiving.
No. So if you look at my memo on the second last page, so on page 2 of the memo, I list the professional activity days, and November 18th, again, we have to designate board priority days and provincial priorities. And so that's a board priority day, and we have listed Christian Community Day. The trustee is correct. We usually have it on October 7th, but we had problems getting a venue on that day. So we're doing it on the 18th.
Okay. Sorry, Mrs. Donahue. I looked above it and I didn't look down further because I wasn't expecting that. Thanks a million.
No problem.
Trustee Ward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Associate Director, I was just wondering about the the professional days and if they match up with the our coterminous board this year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, some do and some don't. So that has been our past practice. And what we have found over the years that the most important things to match are the March break and the Christmas holidays. And when we can, we match the professional activity days.
Okay, thank you very much.
Trustee Coburn.
Yeah, thanks for touching on the Christmas break. I got a fair bit of feedback with regards to that as well. I'm not sure it's happened before that they haven't been coordinated, but anyway, great to see you do that. And Mary, my memo says Friday, September the 2nd. So is that correct for the designated board holiday?
That is, but I only changed that a few minutes ago, so I wasn't sure if you had a PDF form or if you had a live Google Doc. So that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
An earlier version had the 4th, but thank you for catching that.
Is there any other questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. With the first semester, it's mentioned that it's examinations. So can I assume that that is including a summative and an exam, or could you confirm on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Trustee Armstrong asked a good question. So the Ministry of Education in the school year calendar gives us the number of days that we must have as instructional days. And on our secondary calendar, that can include up to 10 examination dates. So we put the examination dates 5 per semester, as has been our past practice. We put them on the calendar. In terms of summative versus examinations, that I cannot give a final determination on that. We still have a committee looking at that. So those are there as exam days. If we have exam days, there may be a more hybrid model. And so once we know all of those details, schools will know that those are their exam days. Summatives are often done before the exam days.
Days are there one way or another. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a mover, please? Trustee Lawrence, Trustee Armstrong. That the memorandum from the Associate Director of Education dated February 16, 2022, entitled Proposed School Year Calendar 2022-2023 be received, and the proposed school year calendar for 2022-2023 be approved. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Donnie. There's no new business, no notions of motions. Confirmation of the action report for February 8th. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee McEwen and Trustee Warren. That the action report covering the period of February 8th, 2022 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Inquiries. I received an inquiry from Trustee Armstrong, and he wanted me to send a letter to a member, a former member of the Police Services Board at the City of Ottawa. I'm not inclined to write a letter that interferes with the City of Ottawa council matters. Item Q, administrative announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one. As you know, Stephanie Dunn works in the background to ensure our board meetings are organized and run smoothly. She does a wonderful job, and today is her birthday. She wanted to celebrate it by attending your meeting this evening. So on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank her for being with us and wish Ms. Dunn a happy birthday.
Congratulations, Stephanie, and I really bet in your heart that it was your first choice to come spend it with us. But congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tom.
It's a bewitching time, and I hope that this is the last board meeting that we do virtually for a while, although you can always continue to do that. I'm looking forward to getting back to the boardroom. So can we have a motion to adjourn, please? Mover, Trustee Coburn, Trustee Moore. That the regular board meeting of February 22nd, 2022 be adjourned at 8:51 p.m. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.